The Mariners suffered yet another frustrating loss last night, and once again, Dan Wilson's decision-making was a big part of the story. We'll talk about that, plus Colt Emerson not getting the call-up in light of Brendan Donovan's injury, and more coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Tuesday, April 21st, 2026. My name is Titan Gonzalez, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Colby Patnode. And on today's show, we'll talk about the Mariners foregoing the opportunity to call up Colt Emerson as the corresponding move for Brendan Donovan's trip to the IL. We'll also discuss what went wrong for Emerson Hancock last night, but we'll start with everything else that went wrong last night. And Colby, I am tired. I am very tired. I am tired talking about Dan Wilson on the show and his decision making in these games, but he just continues to be a big story in a lot of these losses for the Mariners so far to start the 2026 season. Now, he wasn't the reason the Mariners lost last night. I think he was fairly down the list, but he was still part of the story. It starts, though, with the Mariners not capitalizing and not burying JT Ginn when they had multiple opportunities to do so last night. They went 1 for 12 with runners in scoring position. That is going to kill you. Emerson Hancock also had a 3-0 lead, and we'll talk about him a little later on, but he kind of let the game get away from him, and he let the A's get back into this one. And then there's obviously the bullpen situation. Now, I know a lot of people are also criticizing Dan for going to Casey Legumina, and I'm not necessarily defending that decision, but that's not really what I'm upset with Dan about, because it's pretty clear they were down a couple of their high leverage guys last night, and Legumina was probably going to have to factor into that game at one point or another. We can have a discussion about, like, should they have gone to Bizarro first instead of Legumina? Sure. But other than that, like, I'm really, like, that's not what I'm wanting to talk about here with Dan. What I want to talk about with Dan is the decision to once again burn Luke Raley for the sake of a righty on lefty matchup far too early and in a low leverage situation. This one's even more egregious to me than the one in San Diego on Thursday, because at the very least, that was a bases loaded situation. You had an opportunity to maybe, to tie, maybe even take the lead. Now, I think that's still ridiculous because you went to Connor Joe, who hadn't played in 8 days. I think that comes with its own set of issues there.
They're both stupid.
But this one was a fairly low leverage situation. It's a 3-3 ball game. The bases are empty. There's one out. Sure, like Rob Refsnyder could run into one, but like, I know you're trying to get him on base and see if you can make something happen there, but still, that's a fairly low leverage situation. And the A's were using their only good lefty in their bullpen. The only other lefty that they had in their bullpen after Hogan Harris was a guy that they had just called up that day, who I believe has an ERA that starts with a 9. Now, I think that's like in a couple of innings, so like whatever. But still, like, I don't think that's a guy that the A's are probably going to, so long as that game stays close. So I feel pretty safe in assuming here that Raley, that spot in the lineup, would have gotten another opportunity against a righty. And lo and behold, 8th inning comes around. Mariners have runners at second and third, 2 outs. And guess who gets the most important plate appearance of the entire game? Rob Refsnyder against a righty. And again, if the A's were willing to go to that other lefty, I think his name is Brady Basso, just off the top of my head. That might be his name. I don't know. Yeah, whatever. If they were willing to go to that guy, that probably actually works out for you pretty well. And look, you still have Rob Refsnyder on the bench that you can go to in that situation. So it's just a lack of feel for the game and for the situation and having foresight you know, for how the rest of the game is likely going to play out. And like, we all saw it, right? We all saw it. You know, I'm on social media during the game, and everyone's saying the same exact thing. And sure enough, what we all predicted is what happened.
Yeah. You know, Dan likes to play checkers. Unfortunately, he's entered a chess tournament, and he's just completely outwitted and outmatched pretty much every night. I mean, I would venture to say that in totality, Dan Wilson's management has probably cost the Mariners a full win. Maybe two, but probably one. If you just kind of add it up, and like you said, it's not. He's never like the main reason they lose a game. That's the players. I mean, the players have to perform and all that, but
yeah,
the contributions he makes, it's like 5% Dan here, 3% here, 10% here. Those add up, right? And eventually, over the course of a whole season, you start to add those to real wins and losses. And like, let's say hypothetically that Dan's cost his team one full game right now, just based on all the decisions he's made that have backfired. They've all added up to net one win, negative one win. That doesn't seem like that much, but you multiply it by 7, because we're about a seventh of the way through the season. All of a sudden, that's 7 wins. How many times has this Mariner team missed the playoffs by 7 or less games in the last 10 years? 6 times. Like, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it is. They add up and they start to stack a little bit here and there. So, you know, it's just one of those things where it may not seem like that big of a deal. It may seem like we're being overly critical, but these things keep adding up and they keep adding up and they keep adding up. And at the end of the day, if you cost your team 5 games even, that's 5 games is the difference between the playoffs and not. 5 games is the difference between the division and a wild card. It's the difference between home field advantage and a wild card sometimes. Like, you can't ignore, just because you like the guy, you can't ignore all of these problems that keep coming up. And this is a repeated mistake. This is a lesson he should have learned, you know, last week, not even a week ago. He made the same critical mistake. And it's tough to know how much blame to give Dan, because we know that this is a collaborative effort. It always has been, and he gets notes everywhere. But there's feel. There is an understanding. And by the way, just a general rule of thumb, never pinch hit before the 7th, because that spot in the lineup is going to come up again. There's no reason to. And it's especially dumb to do it in a low leverage at bat. Like, Rob Refsnyder could hit a home run there, and it's a solo home run, and you're up by 1 with your banged up bullpen, needing still to get 9 outs to win that game. Like, it's just, there's no sensible reason whatsoever to make the decision that Dan did. He's just kind of managing on autopilot sometimes, and it just doesn't work. You have to have feel. You have to react. You have to watch the game in front of you, and you have to manage the game that's rolling out in front of you, not the one that you played out in your mind 3 hours ago. You have to be able to make these little adjustments, and Dan is either incapable of it or won't do it. And by the way, if Dan is managing on autopilot because that's the way the front office wants him to do it, then guess what? You shouldn't have to hire a manager where you have to write out a script for him to follow.
And by the way, if there is a script, light it on fire.
Right. Because you have to manage the team that you have currently, not the team that you wanted to have on paper, not what you envisioned this would look like. You have to manage the game that is happening right in front of you, right on paper. And again, it's one thing if Refsnyder was hitting well right now, fine, whatever. Still kind of stupid, honestly, because you know he's going to get another at bat, but whatever. Okay. But Refsnyder's not. He's gotten 1 hit all year. It was a home run. Cool. In his last appearance, fine, whatever. But he hasn't been better than Luke Raley at all, especially against lefties, because, you know, Luke's got 2 hits against lefties this year. Refsnyder has 1. And again, it's the 6th inning. That spot is going to come. It is a guarantee that spot will come up again in this ball game. And you know your bullpen is banged up. You know you're probably going to have a big inning to win this game. And instead you sacrifice it, where the absolute upside is that you take a one run lead, you know, with 9 outs to get, with your 3 best leverage arms all down for the day. Like, what are you doing? It doesn't make sense. There's no like formula. There's no scenario that you can build where it makes any sense whatsoever to take Luke Raley out of the game at that point. And again, he's playing checkers while everybody else is playing chess. Like, it's not even like he's trying to play grandmaster.
And the issue too, And the issue too is like he's getting bullied. The Mariners are allowing themselves to get bullied and have the game be dictated by the other dugout.
We're playing the long game here. We're going to get. We know how this is going to play out. We know Luke Raley's going to get another at bat. And if you want to go to your crappy lefty to get Luke Raley out of the game, fine. We'll go to Rob Refsnyder then.
Yeah,
who has a better chance against your bad lefty than he does a good lefty right now. So it's abject failure across the board in process, obviously results, but we have to judge managers on process. It is unfair to judge managers on player results.
Yes.
Because they have nothing to do with that. The process has to be right. And if the process is sound, we're not talking about Dan Wilson every other day on this show, but the process is almost never sound. And we're not even talking about the bullpen stuff because I'll give him a pass on the bullpen. Very clearly, it seemed obvious to me that, Munoz was down today or yesterday. And I mean, I don't know. Bizzardo, kind of weird that he didn't pitch the 8th. So, I mean, was he down? I don't know. Was he going to pitch the 9th if they had the lead?
He was warming up.
Okay, I didn't see that. So Bizzardo was available. Like, I just don't understand.
That's what I heard from people that were at the game. I don't think they ever showed it on the broadcast. Okay. I might be wrong on that, but
Bizzardo was available. He could have pitched. You also could have gone to Criswell or Legumina in the 6th to clean up Hancock's mess and save Ferrer for later in the game. But whatever, there were lefties. The lefties had just hit. So like it. Gabe Spire apparently not available yesterday either. So you're already down a couple leverage guys. I get it. So I'm not giving Dan too hard of a time. The sequencing was a little weird to me, but whatever. Sure. Again, it's the Raley thing though. That's the thing here. The bullpen thing, I lay more at the feet of the front office. Like if you knew you were down 3 or 4 guys, why didn't you make a move? It doesn't make sense. If you knew that there was a high probability that you were going to have to give a high leverage inning to a guy who just threw 45 pitches in mop-up duty 3 days ago, like what are you doing? But anyways, it's the Raley decision, and that's going to be one that we'll probably see again at some point this series. It seems like once a series we're having this conversation because Dan or whoever is making these decisions, and ultimately it's Dan because he has final say on this. They're just falling for the same trick over and over and over and over again. And it's a problem.
Yeah. I mean, going back to what you were saying about the front office and, not making a move, that's kind of the problem with how they built this bullpen, particularly, with guys like Criswell and Legumina, they're out of options. And clearly they don't want to move on from those guys. They don't want to expose them to waivers. And the one guy that does have options that you would actually be willing to move down was available last night in Cole Wilcox.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of the situation, it's kind of the corner that they've backed themselves into here.
We said for the entire winter, we said it in spring training, they were a bullpen arm short. And last night kind of got proven. They needed another quality bullpen arm to be added this winter, and they didn't do it. Last night is just one example of how it burns them.
So we'll talk about Emerson Hancock start. Talk a little bit more about the Mariners offense, which we really didn't do there in the first segment. We mostly just talked about Dan. So I want to talk about the offense because there were some bright spots in the Mariners lineup last night, despite the 1 for 12 with runners in scoring position and all that. So we'll go over that. We'll go over Hancock in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Sponsored Jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data, worldwide. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help you get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcasts. Just go to Indeed.com/podcasts right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcasts. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen for all things Mariners. And also thank you for making the Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Don't forget to check out the Everydayer Club for ad-free episodes and access to a group chat with me and other listeners of this show. Tap the link in the description or go to lockedonmariners.supercast.com to learn more. And it wasn't just Dan and Wilson. That was the reason that I was very annoyed last night, Colby. It was also that this game actually started out really well for the Mariners. You got that insane catch that Julio makes on that ball that knuckled off of the bat of Nick Kurtz. I don't think I've ever seen a baseball do that. I've obviously seen, baseballs knuckle in the air, but not to that extreme. And the fact that Julio was able to catch that ball was wild. That's one of his best catches ever, I think. Mm-hmm. And then you get out to an early 2-0 lead. Cal hits a very impressive opposite field bomb. Josh Naylor gets on the board with an RBI double. He has 3 hits in this one. Might have been his best game of the season so far. It's either that or the 2-homer game against the Astros. Dominic Canzone had himself another great night after, being a big part of Saturday night's win. He checks in with a couple of hits, 94.7 mile per hour homer, and then a 112 double off of the right field wall. Just an absolute laser, very similar to the double that he hit down in San Diego. And yet, as has been the running theme for the Mariners so far offensively this year, while a couple of guys seem to, take a couple steps forward, a step or two forward, the rest of the offense feels like it takes a step or two back. Again, 1 for 12 with runners in scoring position. They had multiple opportunities, especially after Canzone hit that double, to knock JT Ginn out of this game a lot earlier than he wound up leaving it, and they couldn't capitalize. And it's just really frustrating. Like I ultimately, and we'll talk about Emerson Hancock in a second, and how he allowed the A's to get back into this game and all that. But I ultimately put this game on the shoulders of the offense because they had an opportunity to put the A's away and they just couldn't get it done.
Yeah, it's pretty unfortunate too, because this is arguably the best 2, 3, and 4 I've looked in your lineup at the same time. I believe they went a combined 6 for 13. They had 3 extra base hits between the 3 of them. I think they only struck out twice. I believe they even had 2 stolen bases between they were doing everything, and Julio didn't have any extra base hits. It's kind of the one little complaint there, but again, this was great. 6 for 13. This is exactly what you envision your 2, 3, 4 doing. Unfortunately, Brendan Donovan's not there because he's on the IL. JP Crawford's leading off, and he has an over. He did walk later, but whatever. Inconsequential walk. So he goes over, and then unfortunately, on the other side of this stack, Randy has probably his worst game of the year. He goes over 4 with 3 strikeouts. And then obviously Luke Raley, only gets the 2 at-bats, and then Ref Snyder. So 2, 3, and 4 were on base. They threatened. They had extra base hits. They stole bases. They did everything you could. Unfortunately, nobody could get on in front of them, and nobody could drive them in after they did all that. So there was just kind of this gap. It's funny, and again, this is not a complaint about Dan Wilson, just to be clear. But if Canzone had been hitting 6th instead of 7th, the Mariners probably win that game. That's just kind of how it works. And again, that's not a complaint. They should have Canzone hitting below Raley right now. Nobody's saying anything about that. It's just kind of to point out how big of a difference it would be if just one player behind that stack had a good game. The Mariners probably win this game. And unfortunately for us and for them and for Randy, he just was dreadful last night at the plate. And so at that point, it's on Luke Raley to get hits instead of, sack flies and whatnot. And Luke only got a couple opportunities to do it.
Yeah, Rosarena and Rayleigh combined for 0 for 6 with 5 strikeouts.
Yeah. And then you had on top of that, Ref Snyder, who went 0 for 2 with a strikeout as well. So 0 for 8 with 6 strikeouts.
6 Ks. Yeah.
Yeah. That's just not going to get it done. Again, especially when 2, 3, 4 do their job. And again, the bottom of the order was fine. Cole Young kind of had a Cole Young night right now, found a way to get on base once or twice. Leo Rivas checked in the ninth with an RBI double to give them a chance, but unfortunately JP and Cal just couldn't get it done. Which, again, down by 2. So whatever. But it really is last night very frustrating because this is the first time we've seen 2, 3, 4 look like the 2, 3, 4. It's just that the rest of the lineup, the hits just didn't align at the right time. Again, they had 10 hits last night. I think 6 of them were extra base hits. So everything about that game, that box score, you look at it, just quick glance, you would think they scored 6 runs, 7 runs, maybe 8.
Yeah.
I mean, that number, 6 extra base hits out of 10 hits, that's pretty good. And Julio and Cal and Naylor were your best hitters in Canzone. But unfortunately, just because that stack of Randy and Luke really didn't do anything, they were terrible after that 2, 3, 4 stack. You just never could quite deliver that knockout punch. It was just a little bit too disjointed. The hits didn't bunch up together enough. And so as a result, you still score 4, which most nights is going to be enough for you to win with this pitching staff. But you left at least, 3 or 4 more runs on the table. And that's the difference in the game.
Yeah. The bottom of the third and the bottom of the fourth, those innings killed you. You get a 1-out double from Josh Naylor in the bottom of the third, then Randy and Rayleigh strike out back to back to end that threat. Yeah. And then you get a leadoff double from Dominic Canzone on the bottom of the fourth. Cole Young grounds out, moves Canzone to third, then Rivas grounds out with the Rivas grounds out with the infield in. Canzone doesn't go on the contact play, which was actually surprising because it feels like the Mariners always go on the contact play. And then JP grounds out to end the inning.
But I'm confused because Cole Young had the productive out, and productive outs are always good. They're productive.
But yeah, simultaneously while this was happening, while the Mariners offense couldn't put JT Ginn away, things started to get worse for Emerson Hancock. Started to find the middle of the plate a lot. They were even mentioning it on the broadcast. Ryan Roland Smith was pointing it out in real time. And I think like 7 of the last 10 batted ball events before Langoliers' home run, or no, Kurtz's home run, had been hard hit. And then boom, Kurtz homer, Langoliers homer, 3-3 ball game. And then obviously Hancock had given up a home run to Carlos Cortez in the fourth. That guy had 4 hits last night.
Yeah.
So so Hancock, I think it's pretty safe to say this was his worst start of the year.
Yep. It was really there was a big difference between the first 3 innings and the last 2. He just lost really all feel for the sweeper. He almost spiked another one, but then after that, he never really found it again. And so at that point, he became basically just fastballs. That's all he could throw is fastballs, but he couldn't get glove side with the 4-seam or with either of the fastballs. Like he would try, and then it would just run back over the middle of the plate. So essentially, the A's got to a point where they just had to focus on one velocity, and they only had to look in one quadrant of the plate for that pitch. And of course, Hancock, any pitcher, if you end up in a position where you can only throw one pitch and you can only put it in one spot, it doesn't matter how good that pitch is, it's going to get smashed. And I feel like we could all see it coming. Now it got delayed a little bit because Hancock was able to pick off Lawrence Butler, which the Mariners did twice, by the way. So yay, controlling the running game, I guess. For a team that had only been caught stealing once in the entire game, in the entire season, they got caught twice yesterday. So that kind of delayed the inevitable. But I think most people knew just by watching that game, Hancock is just begging to get, absolutely destroyed. And when he got back to the top of the order again, and he was still throwing it right down the middle every time, it was inevitable what was about to happen. So yeah, you can kind of see it coming, but also, again, if we're looking at it from Dan's perspective, why didn't you take him out? If it was so obvious, didn't have the arms to cover 4 innings. He obviously was very desperately trying to get Hancock to get through 6, and the pitch count was fine. So it's not like he was tired or anything, but he just very clearly lost it, and we'll see if he can find it in his next start. It will be against St. Louis on Sunday, I believe. So it was just it was a step back start for him. Yeah. And again, this is why we haven't really liked answering those questions about what do you do when Bryce Miller is healthy. It's like, well, let's get there first, and then we'll see if we have a real conversation or not. Because Hancock has another outing or two like that, it's not going to be a topic of conversation. But we'll see. Again, overall, just one bad start.
Well, yesterday didn't get off to a good start either, even before the game happened. Brendan Donovan landed on the IL, and the Mariners did not make the exciting corresponding move. They went really boring with it. So we'll talk about the decision to not call up Colt Emerson and the impact of Donovan heading to the IL in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. If you've got a sweet tooth like I do, then you know how tough it is to find that perfect treat without all the sugar. That's why the Confetti Craze 5 Hour Energy Shot brings that nostalgic flavor back in a whole new way. This is that classic taste you remember, but with a tasty caffeine boost and zero sugar. It's a quick, easy way to satisfy that sweet craving while keeping things simple and on the go. I've always loved birthday cake, but I'm turning 30 this year, so I can't be eating sweets all day. And this is a perfect alternative. Confetti Craze 5 Hour Energy Shots taste just like birthday cake, vanilla and buttery flavors to let you be unapologetically extra and unstoppably energized. The Funfetti flavor is back on 5hourenergy.com or Amazon. So crack open a Confetti Craze 5 Hour Energy Shot today. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, we have a Patreon. It's called Control the Zone, and on there we talk Mariners, Seahawks, all that good stuff. For more information, go to patreon.com/Control the Zone. Link in the description of this episode. So yesterday, shortly after we got done recording, the Mariners, as they always do, made a roster move. And it wasn't a particularly fun one. Brendan Donovan heading to the 10-day IL with a left groin strain. And Will Wilson has been called up to the big league club. To make room for Wilson on the 40-man roster, Miles Mastrobuoni was transferred to the 60-day IL, which is weird considering that he had just recently started a rehab assignment down in Tacoma. Now, obviously, left groin strain, that's not what had been reported about Donovan over the last couple of days. Apparently, he was dealing with hip tightness, and reportedly, he was available off the bench for Sunday's game. But according to Dan Wilson, they did further imaging on Donovan that revealed the groin strain. Dan said that they felt it was serious enough for him to go on the IL, to warrant an IL stint. Now, it doesn't seem like it's going to be too much of a long-term thing. Dan didn't really express long-term concern here. But obviously, with Donovan going on the IL, a lot of people, even myself included, thought like, hey, is this an opportunity for Colt Emerson to finally get the call up to the majors? And according to Dan Wilson, at least part of the reason for not calling up Colt yesterday was that he's also dealing with a little bit of a wrist issue right now. Which, okay, sure. I think, look, like, it's early. You obviously, the team obviously has a very clear schedule for what they want to do with Colt, and they want to try and stick to that as much as they possibly can. And again, you got the element of a 20-year-old making his major league debut. Just signed that contract. A lot of expectations, a lot of eyes on him. Even though he should translate totally fine over to third base, he's technically going to be learning a new position, learning to play a new position for a team with World Series aspirations. Right. And now you throw in like a wrist issue that he's kind of having to manage on top of that. You're probably not putting him in the best position to succeed here. Going back to what we were talking about in the first segment with Dan and all that, like you want to try and put you guys in the best position to succeed. So Yeah, you got Emerson dealing with a wrist thing, and plus all the other things that I mentioned. Probably not the best situation for him to make his major league debut. So it's a little disappointing because the alternative here is Will Wilson, which like whatever, but I get it.
Will Wilson, who is like at best 5th or 6th on the depth charts at third base behind obviously Donovan, Rivas, Wisdom, Mastroboni. Obviously Emerson would be number 2, but he's not quite ready yet. Regardless of if they say it's the wrist injury or what have you, they clearly don't think he's ready, and the numbers back it up. And that's not to say he won't be ready in a couple weeks, but he's not right now. So yeah, like you're on like your 6th best option to be on this roster, and that's how it goes sometimes, So Will Wilson, former first-round pick, I believe the Angels took him 1 spot ahead of Corbin Carroll. God bless the Angels. So yeah, it's infielder. I doubt he's going to play much. I think they're just going to let Leo Rivas run with the third base job until they make another move. Either Donovan comes back, or I don't know. It's possible Emerson's up tomorrow for all. I mean, who knows, right? Like, oh, the risk got better overnight. Yay, we're ready. Like, we just didn't want to call him up, and then have him face a lefty, but we're going to call him up tomorrow to face the right. I don't know, whatever. But it seems like Wilson's, just a true bench player, which again, I like bench players you might actually use, and the Mariners don't really have that right now. So, yeah, it is what it is. Emerson, again, I just don't think they think he's ready, and they're probably right. The strikeout rate is still a bit of a problem. The swing and miss rate is still a bit of a problem for Emerson, and it's not a problem in that it's a long-term concern or even really a short-term concern. It's just that, like we talked about in spring training, like, this kid's 20 years old. Like, you have to make him make you put him on the roster. And if there's any like thought that he might not be ready, he's not. So you just leave him down there. There's no reason to rush the guy whatsoever. And there's no reason to push it. You can't bring, and also, side note, I don't think this comes into play all that much, but I really don't want to bring up Colt Emerson when the team is struggling, because I don't want the, like, oh, he's the savior. I don't want that like whole tag on it. It's like, bring him up when the team's, 8 games over 500 and like things are going well. And you're like, and now here comes the young kid. Like, so yeah, I think it's pretty clear the Mariners just, I think this could say 2 things. It could say, A, that, we think Donovan's going to be back after his stint, after just the minimum stint, which would be great. But I don't know. Really weird wording from Dan yesterday. Like, we don't think it's serious, but it definitely warranted an IL stint. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Which that could also just be like, hey,
he's going to be 4 or 5 days more. And
he's dealing with this hip tightness thing. He still hasn't really gotten over this groin thing from Anaheim. And again, there's like the hernia surgery of it all and all that. Who knows how, if that's impacting
like,
things.
Hey, if he's going to miss, if he wasn't going to be able to play tomorrow or yesterday, and then like we were planning on benching him against the lefty anyways on Tuesday, and then we have Thursday off. Like, let's just put him on the IL and give him a reset. We'll see. Again, we didn't really get much information on it from the beat writers. Didn't get anything either. But maybe that's part of the reason. Like, Emerson's got the wrist thing. He hasn't been amazing in AAA. He's been good, especially for his age. But he has been amazing. He's got this wrist thing. We think Donovan's going to be back up in a week or so, anyways. So, what's the point of calling him up for a week? And so I think there's just a bunch of factors that went into it that they're just like, it's not time. It's not time. And they're probably right. That's probably the correct way to handle this. And I don't think much of anybody, who actually follows this has a problem with the idea that, like, Colt Emerson, close, but not quite there yet. So let's not push it.
He's played 18 games in AAA this year, 73 plate appearances. He's at 100 total AAA plate appearances dating back to last year with his cup of coffee with the Rainiers, and he's been fine. He's hitting 258, 361, 452, but it's a 26% K rate right now, 11% walk rate, couple homers, more doubles than homers right now. He's been fine. He's just not busting the door down. He's not demanding, call me up right now. He needs more time. I think that's totally fair to say that he needs more time.
I still feel like late May is realistic here. But again, if I do feel like maybe if Donovan was going to miss like 4 weeks, like if he's going to miss a month, if they felt that, maybe they give Colt that time because it's a month and you can kind of reset naturally after that and send him back down if you need to. And if he performs, then it's like, okay, now we have a month to figure out what to, how to handle this going forward. But it does, I don't know, it just kind of seems to me like maybe this is a 2-week thing or a week and a half thing with Donovan. And so again, with all the little factors that we just laid out, they just kind of snowball into this big ultimate, like, now's not the time decision. And, again, I'm going to trust the Mariners on this one. And also just in general, trusting the numbers that I usually look at with prospects anyways, it does tell me that Colt's not quite ready.
And look, they've made a very significant investment in this guy, and they clearly have a schedule in mind for him. And it's very possible that they're just not willing to move off of that schedule for anything. Even if Brendan Donovan went down with a season-ending injury, maybe they wouldn't do it right then and there.
Look, to put it as plain as possible, if you don't think this guy is ready, you don't call him up, because you have to do right by the player, not the team, because this is a guy, like you said, you've invested a lot in, you're planning on building your future around. And again, there's no guarantee he's any better than Leo Rivas right now. So what's the point of pushing it? Doesn't make sense.
All right, well, that's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And once again, if you never miss an episode, it's time to make it official. Join the Locked On Everydayer Club and get ad-free audio, access to our members-only Discord, and more, all built for our most loyal fans. Colby Patnode, I'm Titan Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at @LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Titan Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. We're also on Blue Sky. You can follow me at TDG, Colby at MLB Colby, and the show at Locked On Mariners. You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Mariners. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.